And enough talking from me. Let me just say that we are incredibly excited to do this screening. One of the greatest things about Exhumed Films, in my opinion, is over the course of 22 years, we've shown hundreds of movies, we've done hundreds of screenings, but truly, and I'm not being cliche, my favorite thing about this is the relationships that we've made and the friendships that we have formed and the fact that we see people and, you know, I've seen people who I met when I was in my 20s and they were teenagers, and now we're middle age and we've got families and we can still talk and commiserate about life and share our love of these movies. And we've built a community, I really think, over the course of 20-some years. And so it's extremely gratifying to me that not only are we watching two fantastic films, but that we're able to celebrate local friends and local colleagues and local horror and cinema fans who have created something really, truly impressive and something that makes us incredibly proud to be a part of, not just to present, but to know that, hey, I know the people that did this, and they're great people, and to celebrate hometown, I hesitate to say heroes, but hometown friends and filmmakers. So with that said, I'm going to introduce one gentleman who's going to come up, and then he's going to introduce some others, and they'll give you guys an introduction to the film. So Phil Nobile Jr. is the current editor-in-chief of Fangoria, and he's been a longtime supporter and friend of Exhumed Films. He's come to lots of screenings. He was, if I'm not mistaken, the pull quote on the box of Ninja Busters, which a couple of you want, is from Phil. So he's really been a big supporter and a big friend of Exhumed for many years. So we're so happy and gratified that we can welcome him and a film that he was a part of. So I'm going to sit down and turn this over to Phil, who's going to give you guys an introduction into tonight's movie. So Phil, come on up.
I feel like the subtext of that was Dan letting you all know how old I am. That was pretty fucked up. No, I need a minute because I've been coming to Exhumed for over 20 years, and it's just blowing my mind that that Exhumed Films, the Exhumed Films, is showing something that we helped make, and it's just, I'm so proud of it. But when we talked about these different screenings we were going to do, Shudder, who's been awesome, was like L.A., New York, TIFF, and then Kelly and I were like, well, what about Philly? And we knew it had to be Exhumed, and we're so glad that you guys were into it. And I just want to thank you a lot for letting us have the hometown screening here. It's really cool. In 1992, with my best friend Sean O'Leary, I watched, somewhere in Philly, I forget who screened it, but we watched Ganja and Hess, and I hated it. I didn't understand it. I didn't understand the pacing. I didn't understand what it was doing. And I walked out of it all cranky, and I didn't like this film. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I kept revisiting this film over the years. And I think what happened was eventually I realized that what 21-year-old me was not connecting with was that it was a film that wasn't talking to me. It was a film that was made by people that weren't like me. And it was made for people who weren't like me. And it sounds obvious, but at 21, it was a real eye-opener that not everything's for you. There's other people who have other passions and other interests, and it inspired. It was a real moment in terms of like opening my eyes up toward being curious to things. So I'm always been, as I've gotten older, I've been curious about what other people are into and what other voices have to say, and that's sort of what fed my love of film going through the years. And that idea of listening to what other folks have to say is how I found a blog by a writer named Ashley Blackwell. And yeah. And I always found Ashley's work very compelling because she was writing about something that no one else was writing about, and she was invested in it, and she was passionate about it, and she just gave me an education. I mean, it was a lot of reading something she would write about and then chasing down that film. And, you know, she's just been slugging away on her blog for years and years. And what happened was in 2017, I walked out of Get Out, and I thought, God damn it, Ashley Blackwell is a prophet. I need to talk to Ashley about this movie. And I reached out to her, and we had a conversation. And I'm gonna ask Ashley to come up right now. on? Dan, please help. Please don't silence Ashley. There's 3. We're going to use them all. There it is. And so Ashley and I had lunch at PS & Co. on Locust.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Sure. And then I asked you about whether or not there's a story to be told here, right?
Yes, there's a 100+ year story to tell. Yeah. And you had this idea and for a documentary, and I very casually said, sure, it sounds like a great idea.
But maybe I was a bullshit artist.
No,
we didn't know.
I knew, but we were friends already, so
Yeah.
I knew you weren't BSing me.
Yeah, and so Ashley knew this material up and down, and my background before any of this Fango stuff is I produced nonfiction television. So I had a machine in place in Philadelphia at Stage 3 Productions, all those folks over there, and I knew that if we had the right person telling the story, that we could make a documentary happen. And I felt like it was something in the air that we knew it was going to happen. I kept saying to you, I think one of the refrains was like, if we don't do it, somebody's going to do it. If we don't do it, somebody's going to do it.
And your nightmares about it.
I would have
You text me and be like, I'd show you something if that was like, if someone was anything black horror in a film or a documentary, you would go in sweats in a text, and I'm just like, calm down. We're going to do this.
Yes, Ashley had to calm me down. So thankfully, Stage 3, one of the partners of Stage 3 is a woman named Kelly Ryan. I'm going to ask Kelly Ryan to come up now. And I've worked for Kelly for 12 years, and I don't think I've ever worked for someone who has trusted me and respected me as much as Kelly has. And so I'm eternally grateful for that. But Kelly didn't know about black horror, didn't know about this stuff, and said yes anyway. She dove in and she was fearless. And then we began a journey of trying to pitch this thing.
Absolutely, and I have to say, Phil and Ashley were so passionate about it and made such a incredible argument for it that fear that someone else was going to do it became my fear. So every Monday morning, I'd be like waiting for Phil to come in and say, "It's gonna happen, it's gonna happen."
Yeah.
But we did our thing and put together a sizzle and what we call a deck, kind of the story, working with Ashley, and started taking it around to the various networks that we thought might be interested, and no one bit for a very long time.
A year. Yeah. So you hear stories about Netflix will greenlight anything. That's not true.
No, that's not true.
They passed. Blumhouse passed. Monkey Paw passed. Everyone was passing, and we ran out the clock on 2017. And then in 2018, I got a call out of the blue from a producer named Dallas Sonye. He had just bought Fangoria, and he hired me. And I told Kelly I was leaving, and she cried, and it was weird.
I did cry.
And I left, and 2 weeks after I left, Jordan Peele won the Oscar for Get Out, and the next day, Shudder called and bought the project. And I was like, shit. I don't work there anymore. So it was a Stage 3 project, but Stage 3 didn't have, I wasn't going to be able to be part of the day-to-day. And that's where an individual named Danielle Burrows came in. I'd like to invite her to come up.
Woo!
Grab the mic. So Danielle was someone I just trusted implicitly because that thing I said about curiosity, there's something stuck with me last month or so. Captain Sully wrote this thing about Trump, and he called him remarkably incurious. And it was the sickest burn. Because I think the Exhumed crowd is a curious crowd. You guys want to see some shit that you have never seen before. You always want to see something new. You always want to see something different. And when I read that thing, I was like, oh, there's people out there who aren't curious. And Danielle's one of the most curious people I know. So I knew that she and Ashley would make a good fit. And the two of them made this project happen. They wrote it and produced it together. And it's Black History Month, and that's why Shudder waited till February to debut the thing. But it's also Women in Horror Month. And I think it's spectacular that this documentary is put together by these three ladies. Aww. And I want to give it up for them.
Well, I just have to say that these guys did the film. I put people together and went in the room and tried to sell it, but these are the minds that put it together, and they did a brilliant job. I'm happy to have had a very small role in this amazing film, but it has been the most rewarding professional experience of my life. I will say that.
Nice. Anything else, ladies? Should we just watch this damn movie at this point?
I think we should. Yeah, let's watch this.
Hey, thanks for listening to me.
Thank you very
Thanks to
much.
my boss for Fangoria for sponsoring this screening. Thanks to Exhumed. I hope you guys like what we did. Who's got a question? Right there on the aisle.
Yeah, I guess it's more of a comment. I just wanted to thank the filmmakers. I thought it was a brilliant film. I thought it was so beautifully done. I'm a big fan of the book that it was based on. And to see you do such a fantastic job with the film was just very, very moving and inspiring. I thought it was so refreshing to hear these voices finally being given a chance to share their stories and their perspectives. And it was just beautifully, beautifully done. I can't say enough. It was brilliant. I did want to ask, is it going to be available on DVD for purchase?
Ooh.
Ooh, that's.
Kelly's got to rewrite the contracts again. Shudder is a streaming service, and I encourage you all to subscribe to Shudder. There's a free trial period.
Yes,
You can check it
exactly.
out. They've also, so it's probably, I don't know what their DVD plans are, but it'll be on Shudder, and they've done a really cool thing where they've curated a number of films. Do you remember which movies are on Shudder?
So also, if you want 1 month free, because it's Women in Horror Month, if you type in a promo code, I think it's WIHMX, then you can get a whole month of it, so you can watch it as many times as you want for like 28 days, I'm sorry. Well, less than 28 days now, because we're getting into February, but yeah.
They've got Bones on there?
Yeah, I don't think there's...
It is. I watched it today.
Today?
Wow.
Okay, that's a new addition.
But they
I
did-
like this stuff. I mean,
So the
yeah.
so
Ashley did recommended some.
Yeah, so the People Under Stairs, Tales from the Hood, Ganja and Hess is back up there.
Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, so I guess they're gonna build it from there on, right? They're
Yeah,
gonna put
something
more-
like that.
Yeah.
There's some MGM hang-ups. You won't get JD's Revenge on there, but
Yeah, you can watch those on Amazon Prime, I believe.
you can also buy JD's Revenge from Diabolic DVD, which I recommend. I have a question. You've watched this a bunch of times now. What's missing? What do you wish you had in there that we didn't get in there, besides Casey Lemons?
Casey Lemons.
Well, yeah. Is there something that you sort of wish we had gotten into that we didn't?
I don't know. That's really difficult question because it's. I guess I know these films so well, so intimately. I know we couldn't like do everything, and I know that there were. I guess for me, and I wish we kind of talked more about. I guess I wish we kind of dug more deeper into tokenism because there's this in the 80s. There's kind of this myriad of different characters that made a ginormous impact on a lot of generations that kind of came afterward. But their roles were so minimal. But again, they were so present and so stark for so many. Especially, I know a lot of Black filmmakers and creatives and just fans today. So I kind of wish we were kind of had a more of a discourse about. How such a small role can make such a huge impact.
Right. Like Sheila in Elm Street 4 was a big one for you. I know that, right?
Of course.
Yeah. And she wasn't available. I really wanted to put you guys in a room together, but she couldn't do it at the time.
Unfortunately she couldn't do it. I texted her, but it was a big conflict, and it was a reasonable conflict. That's why she couldn't do it. You didn't see nerdy Black women on screen in the 1980s. You just didn't. Maybe Whoopi Goldberg in Jumping Jack Flash, but that's about it. So, and I think that's why her role made such a huge impact for a lot of people.
Cool. Another question, and I'm not running up those stairs again, so yell. Yes, ma'am. Yep. Stand up and holler.
Hi.
We don't talk about that film.
Well, first, thank you for liking the site. Again, honestly, I just started it because I was frustrated because I didn't see a lot of horror journalists kind of talking about Black women specifically in this space. As far as the footage we got, I think that's almost everything I think we got as far as talking about Death by Temptation and the kind of the morality tale theme that kind of ran throughout the 40s and then kind of came back in the 90s. I think that was everything. I don't think we went too deep. I think I may have kind of like verbal vomited some more stuff that just didn't make it. But yeah, it's a tight 83 minutes.
It is, and I think that really Ernest was the voice of the Ganja and Hess section. There wasn't a whole lot of folks who could speak to it in a specific way. I mentioned at the top, and I said I hated it in 1992. It's one of my favorite films now, and I wrote about it one time, and that's how Ashley and I think found each other.
Yeah,
maybe once upon a time.
Yeah, it's even honestly, I've been asked to talk about it before myself, and it's extremely difficult to talk about because it is such a layered and complex film. It was much easier for me to kind of sit down with it and watch it again and kind of break down scene by scene and kind of. And I took a theme from it when I wrote about it. I talked about kind of the romance between Dr. Hess and Ganja, and it was really easy because what I found was there was this kind of beautiful blossoming of her character. Like, oh, it's not just about him, but it's about her and her arc, and so. Again, that's easier to write, to meditate on, and to actually kind of talk about.
It's not a real soundbite thing. But Ganja and Hess, the weird balance between the Christianity and that sort of pre-Christian African religion in there, it probably needs its own documentary, I would guess. I'm going to ask another question. When I was 3 years old, my mom taught me to swim by throwing me in a creek. And I just had to learn. And that's sort of how I felt Danielle jumped into this project in some degree.
Absolutely.
Were you, what immediately... what was daunting and what was exciting to you when we kind of, mapped you to this thing as the train was already rolling?
I actually think what was most daunting, as is the case with most productions, is you have to apply weight to topics. And you can make, I feel like particularly with Ashley at the helm and her passion for it, and me sharing some knowledge, but nothing to the extent she did, just making those decisions about content is so difficult. You marry yourself to so many great bites, but you, at the same time in the edit, and I like to point out our two editors are here, that you're making a singular decision. You're also making a decision regarding how this moment will live in regard to the larger piece. And sometimes you haven't got the larger piece yet. So you're chronically playing this game of tug of war and back and forth. So as Ashley and I work together, and I'm kind of looking at her like, is this right? Is this what we should be saying? Is this accurate? Is this the thing that we should elevate while this other thing takes the back seat? Just that it's like a blob. It's this moving thing, and you're always giving and taking and pushing and pulling, particularly when you have a timeline and a budget and a running time that your client doesn't want you to exceed. So there's something mathematical about it that I enjoyed, and I think the fact that there was some familiarity with the content, but I wasn't immersed in it the way Ashley was, allowed me to look at it through that lens at times and lean on her to make some of those tougher editorial decisions.
Nice. And I want to point out that when Kelly and I and Ashley and I were pitching this in 2017, we were pitching a 4-part series. And, couldn't get any traction on that, but you can see how you could easily make a 4-hour series about a 100-year history. And when it was bought by Shudder, the line was under 90. Come in under 90. They wanted 70 at one moment, and we were pushing back on that. So I like to point out that the subtitle of the documentary is A History of Black Horror, not The History of Black Horror. It's a starting point, and I think that hopefully it inspires folks to check out some of these films that are a little underseen and underknown.
A lot of them are on YouTube, so.
If that's, you gotta do what you gotta do, Any more questions? Yes, ma'am. Well, definitely Us. Jordan Peele's Us coming out March 22nd, and I can't say how I know this, but I'm going to tell you that if you thought Get Out was a horror film, Us is going to blow your mind. What are you looking forward to, Kelly?
I'm looking forward to the next documentary I'm going to be writing.
She is available for pitches. You can hit her up. Ashley?
honestly, looking forward to see what all the independent filmmakers are doing. There's a great filmmaker, her name is Nikiatu Jusu. She just had a Sundance premiere of her Black vampire film called Suicide by Sunlight. Please support that sister, support her co-writer, Arshania Williams. So people like her, I know there's Mariama Diallo, who actually had Hair Wolf here at Black Star. I mean, these are some amazing filmmakers who are making some sharp commentary, and they're blending horror into that, and I think it's amazing. So Google those women, Google the men also who are making horror films too out there, because they need our support as well.
Anyone else? Dan.
We're kind of inundated right now with documentaries, and I love the interview style, how it's very casual. How did you come up with the idea of they would be like talking to each other? Because it kind of brought us into the conversation in a very sort of like organic way that we don't normally get when we're watching like your normal like documentary that we're so used to seeing.
Sure. Well, black people talking in a movie theater. I said that as a joke to Ashley, but really it sprung from a conversation that Ashley and I had, where this thing that kept coming up was about seeing yourself on screen. I want to see myself on screen. I'm not seeing myself on screen, and we made it literal. We're going to put them in the theater, and we're going to show them clips, and the clips it's like a highlight reel of just different moments from different films. And it was like, think of it like flashcards, right? And then we would stick Ken Foree and Keith David down, and they would watch these clips. Sometimes it was a film they didn't know, sometimes it was a film they were in Ernest Dickerson's case, sometimes it's a film he made, and it would spark these conversations. But we always wanted the idea of it being a living oral history of these folks telling each other the story, and not in an authoritative, dry kind of way. Sometimes it's just gonna be a random anecdote about something that happened, like wanting to be Dracula when he was a teenager. He wanted to be the first Dracula. It was just a way to make it organic and to make it this living, like almost like a folk tale that they're telling each other and that is still being told. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
And a few people have asked, how do we pair the directors, the actors, the on-camera interviews, and some of them were more by design than others. Again, going back to that process, there were a lot of availability challenges. It's LA, we're only out there for a few days, and sometimes it was a matter of these two people are available at the same time, other times there was a little more strategy behind it, but something that was great was that everybody showed up, everybody did some homework, everybody gave some thought to their own relationship with the genre. I think everybody had seen Get Out, so it was helpful that everybody just rose to the occasion and was there ready to speak, and it worked out really well. I think that we were really happy with the pairings and how they shook out.
And I just want to also call out Willa Clinton-Joins, who's here tonight with us, because Willa's
our casting director. She found everybody.
The show, and she did an incredible job. I mean,
yeah. To your point, one of the things that blew my mind was how much more some folks knew than we were expecting. Like, we didn't know Rachel True was going to be able to speak to the whole 100 years.
Absolutely.
I knew.
And I think you heard Ken Foree at the end say, you didn't even tell us what you were rolling, and that was part of it too. Phil was kind of, it got them talking conversationally without realizing they were, we were on, it was time to perform, and that really worked out well also. They were very casual. Yeah, a lot of footage.
Yeah. Do I need to wrap up, Dan?
I'm great.
Great. Any more questions? I see a gentleman back there.
Hey, thanks for the amazing documentary. You mentioned earlier a little bit of having issues with having the film picked up, right?
Yes.
I think you mentioned like some difficulties in editing on the time frame for the claim. What were some of the major obstacles that you faced?
Oh, I have a good one. Shudder bought it, and they said, but you have to get Jordan Peele.
Yes.
And we said, sure, no problem. And we had no fucking idea how we were going to get Jordan Peele. And it was kind of down to the wire. It was a lot of back and forth, and it was Willa working some magic, and
it was a very happy day when Willa called.
And I tell folks all the time, but we pitched it to Monkey Paw in 2017 to his development team, but like 1 year and 1 day after we were at Monkey Paw pitching, we were filming Jordan's interview, and we didn't know it until we were sitting there lighting it. I looked at like the date of the pictures on my iPhone. I'm like, we were here a year ago.
Yeah.
And
We also got the call that Jordan Peele would be available to us. He was trying, but he was in post-production and a busy guy, unsurprisingly. And I think we got the call on a Thursday that if we wanted to interview him within this time frame, we should be in his office in the Hollywood Hills with no cell phone signal on Monday. So that was he was obviously dictating a lot of like the second end of our production schedule, and he was gracious, and his team was gracious. They ended up giving us more time than they had initially promised.
Yeah.
And he was really laid back. I was honestly kind of nervous about us like tinkering around in his office and rearranging everything. But he came in, he was like, "Oh, this is cool, man." You know? So I'm really happy that he was really a nice guy and really approachable and just gave us everything that we needed for his segments.
Phil was one moving everything around in his office, by the way.
No, and it's not obvious in the documentary, but Ashley did all the interviews. She interviewed every person on there, and I think she did a great job of getting them to open up. And even though she just shamed me a minute ago for not knowing something she knew, I'm going to give her credit for, she prompted Richard Lawson to ask that question about that moment in Scream, BLACULA, Scream, where a man's got to see himself. I didn't remember that moment, and she had it in her back pocket, and it becomes this pivotal moment at the end of the documentary, and you killed it.
And shout out to Asli Dukan, who is doing a documentary of a similar called Invisible Universe, but she's going into horror, sci-fi, and fantasy. And a lot of her work influenced me and influenced a lot of the talking points that I was able to kind of direct to some of the subjects that we had. So I appreciate her work as well.
Yeah, and while we're all standing here, I just want to say that Tananarive Due, she started a horror class, a black horror class at USC, called The Sunken Place that happened after Get Out. And we saw her online, and we reached out and asked her to join us. And she came on as an executive producer, and she was like a real light on this project.
Amazing.
She's amazing. Robin Means Coleman trusted us with the title of her book and let us, adapt it essentially while being kind of isolated. We shot an interview with her, Danielle and Ashley did, but she wasn't involved day to day, and there was just a lot of trust that she put in us, and I will always be appreciative of that. And our director, Xavier Bergen, who oversaw the filming of the interviews, we knew we wanted somebody with a great eye and somebody who understood. We'd kind of pitched this concept already to Shudder, so he had to just sort of get on board with a signed-off concept, but he executed it remarkably. And they're all, we saw some of them in LA and in New York last night, but they weren't able to join us today, but I didn't want to leave them out of this conversation. Any more questions from anyone? Nothing? Nothing? Give it.
You mentioned that you originally were pitching it as a multi-part series. Are you looking to do more after this, or are you going to do other parts of the series? Is there more to tell?
I mean, yes, there's definitely more to tell. The question, the more challenging question is the landscape of it. Would Shudder want to do an expanded version of this? Are we ever going to get these people to sit down again? Do we go back into our footage and open it up? Will Ashley ever talk to me again after today? These are the questions that we have to think about. What do you think, Ashley?
I would love to.
After she sleeps.
I think she's retired. I give Ashley so much shit every day, and she puts up with it, but I want her to know that I have a deep, deep respect for her.
Absolutely. We all do.
Dan, I'd like to be done now. I'd like to be done now.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again for everybody